right. Welcome to today's webinar on Inspect and Adapt here with ICON. We get so many requests here at ICON for this topic. So many people struggling with how do we get the results we're looking for from Inspect and Adapt? We know we need it. We know it's key to our transformation progress, but we're under pressure. We're under pressure from the teams to get the results. We're under pressure from our leadership. How can we make these sessions better? So excited to bring this webinar to you today. Hopefully you'll get some tips and tricks to get those results. I'll start with introductions. I'm Dee Miller with ICON. I've been with the company about 1.5 years now. I'm on the business development and customer support team. I was a client for over a decade, many times, clearly loved the company, was really happy to join them. Actually worked with Doug Less here for a couple of years. So I'll start with Doug's introduction. Doug is one of our most senior transformation coaches, one of our SPCTs. He has 20 years experience in the Agile world, at least 10 of those in Agile coaching and mentoring. And Doug, honestly, to this day, I run into people we used to work with a decade ago, and I love it because they're always very complimentary of you. They're like, the passion and energy that Doug brought was just unbelievable. They have fond memories of working with you. So it's always fun to say we work together again.
Awesome.
And we're also here with Corby James from Aptio. And Corby has 30 years of experience advising in technology, digital transformations, lean agile transformations, clearly an expert on one of Aptio's tools, Target Process. And Corby, I have to give you guys kudos. We get a lot of requests for tools recommendations. We've introduced some of our customers to you recently, and really over the last year, and they love Target Process, both the functionality and how easy it is to implement. So great job there. Customers are loving your tool. So thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. And now that we're part of IBM, it's only going to get bigger and better, we hope.
Awesome. Before we get started, I will flip over to a little survey we did. So when you all registered for the webinar, we thought we would get some feedback from you guys on what are the top challenges that you might be experiencing with I&A that you want some tips and tricks on. So I won't cover all of them because you can read them, but I'll cover the top 3. I happen to know Doug's going to cover all of them as far as tips and tricks throughout the presentation, though. So the top 3, very, very close contenders: lack of participation of teams, lack of participation of the stakeholders, lack of follow through on the solutions. So, if you've ever been facilitating these sessions, you know that you're under pressure to get these results and get the attention of both the teams, the stakeholders, your leadership to make progress solving the biggest challenges. So with that, Doug, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Dee. I'm just going to quickly go through this agenda. As Dee mentioned, we're going to be touching on a lot of those challenges that you all expressed in the survey. And I'm just going to kind of summarize it into like 3 major areas. But I do want to take a step back, as always, to give everyone context about what is this Safe, Inspect, and Adapt event. We'll start there. We'll talk about why it's important. And then we'll talk about some of these common challenges, right? And I'll maybe share some anecdotes and experiences around some key things around that. And then some tips and tricks. In that tips and tricks, it's kind of just going to be a summation of all the challenges, what not to do. You can kind of summarize into the tips and tricks for better Inspect and Adapt events. We've got Corby here. We'll talk about a few of the tools, including Target Process, that you can actually use to help the Inspect and Adapt events. And then we're going to open it up with some QA at the very end. I definitely want to make time for QA. I don't consider it to be a workshop without QA. So without further ado, let's take a step into what is this Inspect and Adapt event. It's really, if we think about scaling agility, going all the way back to Scrum teams. Scrum teams start with planning and they end with a review and retrospective. We do the exact same thing at scale when we're talking about teams of Agile teams, or what we call an Agile release train, or even a solution train with multiple Agile release trains, where we have hundreds of people that are all working together towards an integrated solution. So much like a Scrum team ends with a review and retrospective, our PI cycle, our planning interval cycle, actually concludes with an Inspect and Adapt event. And it does have 3 parts, not to be skipped. That first part is the system demo, right? This is a demonstration of the fully integrated solution. So here's where product management takes on the role of the demonstrator and ensuring that this demo covers the integrated solution and all these PI objectives. What has been developed? It's going to cover all the major functionalities at the high level that have been developed. It's the result of the PI. And now what makes this different from these interim system demos we have? It's the audience, right? This final showcase here, it's a much larger audience than those biweekly system demos. You're going to have stakeholders from across the organization. If you're working in systems that have sales, that impact sales and marketing, they need to know what the next thing that they can sell is. You might have them there. You might have HR there if you're working on some internal systems. You might have customer service representatives there, or your customer service organization represented there. They're going to be part of this because they need to see what's coming and embrace that and know what's on the horizon. Also, you might have shareholders or investors, right? I've worked with startups that are using SAFE, and they have the Mark Cumans, the Dave and Johns, the Barbara Cochrans there, that they want to know what you're building, right? They want to know, I'm sinking money into this. What am I getting for my money? I want them there. And above all, I want, if at all possible, customers there. I want someone from the market who is receiving this benefit. I want them there. Talking to Dee and I were just chatting beforehand on this and reminiscing. We actually had, developing a medical device, we actually had oncologists and dosimetrists present at our system demos so that they could actually see what their world was going to be like with this new system. We had we call it a trusted consortium of customers, and we want them there to get that. I was at a large insurance company that actually had, they have agents. They're still one of these insurance companies, not like Progressive, but they actually have agents in the field. And so we had field agents in attendance at these demos because we were working on their portal. So we do things like that. So we want to have them there so the audience is much larger. So done well and making time for feedback, because we have these people present, we want their feedback. This tends to be about 60 minutes of this overall 3 to 4 hours that this Inspect and Adapt has. It's about 60 minutes when done well. And then once that concludes, the second part of this is the quantitative and qualitative measurement. It's our metrics, right? We want to go over all the metrics that are used to measure our performance, measure the quality of our system, all these different perspectives, quantitative and qualitative. It could be quality metrics. We know about this program predictability, how predictable are we against our PI objectives, but we might want to have some of these flow metrics. We might want to have quality metrics in here, some things around quality, or some things around DORA metrics. If you're concerned about, CI/CD and DevOps, we might want to have some of those there. But then when it says, well, 45 to 60 minutes to go through metrics, yes. Yeah, this is 45 to 60 minutes of this. So this is another 45 to 60. And why? Because it's not the metrics that matter. It's actually the narrative behind it. So regardless of what you measure, the numbers alone don't tell a story. All metrics need to be discussed to uncover the narrative. And that narrative is what's going to provide the key insights into the final part, which is the retrospective and problem-solving workshop. A lot of people tend to think I&A is just this. No, it's actually the demo plus the quantitative and qualitative metrics, which feeds into the retrospective and problem-solving workshop. Right, this is the phase where teams are going to surface major programmatic issues, whether in product, process, maturity, all these types of things that they're going to look at, where they're having difficulties, major bottlenecks that keep recurring. And then they're going to focus on those that they feel are the biggest issues that they need to solve. And then they're going to break out into problem-solving workshops. And this is where we use tools like, fishbone analysis, 5 whys, Pareto analysis to really get down to the root of the issue. So we're not just looking at symptoms, we're actually looking at the root of the issue. And then once we've done that, we want to have unfettered brainstorming of brainstorming solutions, drilling down on these, finding these causes. What's the brainstorming to yield, even the craziest, wildest ideas that could actually use to solve this. No idea is unwelcome. They're all welcome. And really what this does is this enables the entire relentless improvement lifecycle to be brought to life. That's what this is. The I&A is that overall relentless improvement. It's one of our core values in SAFE, relentless improvement. So this is why we do it, right? There's several things here, but we want to do this to celebrate our achievement. It's a golden opportunity for everyone to take advantage of all that's been accomplished, recognize collective contributions where teamwork is flourishing, and all those things we bring together. It's an opportunity to recognize those things. It's also an opportunity to ensure alignment. We always hear about, this is what the business asked for. Is this what the implementation group, the implementation teams and development teams, or whoever's producing the product, is there alignment there? Did we deliver on our PI objectives? Did we work on the most valuable things? Are we creating an environment of mutual trust between business and the implementation folks, right? Are we building that trust? Those people that are doing product delivery and the people that are doing product management, is there alignment? We're making sure that that happens. This is our chance to reflect on that. It's a chance, again, to validate the results, right? What do the metrics data tell us? Are we allocating capacity to the right things? Are we predictable? What about quality? What adjustments do we need to make moving forward? Constantly thinking about that relentless improvement, that constant sense of uncomfort that we have to get better. We want to get better every single day. As one of my fellow colleagues says, I want to suck less today than I did yesterday. And I want to constantly be thinking about that, is what can I do to be better? And finally, the inspect and adapt is our opportunity to optimize the entire product development system, that system of people doing the work, as well as our processes and our products, right? And we can identify and address all those underlying issues that might be slowing us down. It's positive change. And at the end of the day, when we do this, and why we want to do this, why we want to invest in this, is because this is our chance to enhance productivity. We're always talking about productivity. How do we get faster? How do we get better? And ultimately, it's for more profit margin, right? That's how we're going to get more profit, right? By streamlining things, finding where the bottlenecks are. Where do we need to organize around value? Where can we eliminate dependencies and start to reorganize around value and accelerate, right? And meet our customers' needs head on, avoid disruption, right? It's our opportunity to do that so that we're well prepped and well prepared. And so that's exactly what it is. It is our cycle of relentless improvement, and it's baked into SAFE so we can do that. And leaders, if you're a leader on the phone, you absolutely need to be involved, because adopting practices like inspect and adapt, it's what allows you to both look at your product for improvement and your process for improvement, and then adapt them to ultimately improve the organization and actually generate more profit, more savings, more customer satisfaction, higher NPS scores. And it comes back to this, right? Only leaders have the power to fundamentally change the organization, the way the work is performed. Only you can do that. We've learned that from Deming. Only you can actually do that. So how can you be involved? The first is to attend, right? Make this a priority. You have to make sure that I&A is executed, right? It's part of the cadence, and your commitment to attend is part of that. Your commitment to making sure it happens. Obviously, actively participate, engage, ask questions, provide feedback, ask what's in it for me with them, right? Ask so what questions, be provocative. It's your opportunity to participate and challenge the status quo. And listen and learn, much like you'd go on a Gemba walk and walk the floor. Read the room. What are you hearing? What are people saying? What are people popping up? What engagement is happening and not happening? It's your opportunity to explore, learn, listen, and ultimately support the teams, right? You can create the environment for relentless improvement. You can actually do that. How can you help? How can you encourage untamed creativity? How can you create the environment of safety? How can you be a servant leader? How can you be a lean, agile leader and think about optimization? Think about eliminating waste. Think about these things and apply that. So leadership involvement is so critical to this. In making sure you're there. And so let's go back, thinking back to that survey. I'll just jump ahead. Thinking about the 3 ways that I would break down the common challenges to a successful inspect and adapt event. And the first is lack of preparation. And that's people aren't invited, right? I don't have the right stakeholders invited. I haven't invited them. I don't have customers there. I haven't looked at who all might be impacted by the solutions I'm delivering and invite some representation from them. Or one of the worst things that I've seen is people are invited late, right? You do not schedule the inspect and adapt and put it on people's calendars a day, a week, or 2 weeks before it happens, right? Since this is a cadence-based ceremony, this can be just like PI planning. We can put like clockwork when our PI planning is happening. I should have these invites on calendars annually. I should know when they hit every single PI, and I have them baked on a cadence. I have seen that far too often where you don't get the participation of people because you wait until the last minute. RTEs, STEs, whoever is responsible for scheduling them waits to the last minute to schedule them. These, I should know when inspect and adapt is. At the same time I know when the PI event is, I know when that PI's inspect and adapt event is. So I can plan it. People can block it out, make sure it's a priority for people to be there. And that's, as a leader, you can make it a priority by your commitment to attend. And we want people to attend, our customers and end users invited. Is it blocked out on your calendar? That's the big thing there, is that whole lack of preparation. Another one I get is there's no story to tell in a demo. This is probably my biggest pet peeve is when I go to a demo and nothing fits together, right? That's the worst demos to go to. These demos that we just go team by team by team and they talk about what they did, it's completely disjointed. It doesn't feel integrated. It doesn't follow any sort of user flow. It doesn't follow any sort of journey map or user flow or how a user would navigate the application. It's all over the place. I like it a house analogy. If I were going to look to buy a house and the real estate agent, first thing they do is walk me straight to the house into the backyard to look at this fancy cedar fence. And then they take me up to the master bathroom. And then they take me back down to the basement. Then they take me back outside to look at the fire pit and the enclosure that they have there. Then they take me back to the master bedroom. Then they take me somewhere else, right? It's disjointed. It doesn't feel how I would navigate a house, right? I want to look at a room in its entirety. And so we want to do that. And it's really to reduce the cognitive load of those people attending. You will get better feedback when your demos are exciting, right? When they meet that. As a customer, if I'm like applying for a loan, if I'm actually going through that loan application process, this doesn't matter what team worked on what screen. It's like when that screen comes up, we talk about what was new for that. So it's less about team by team by team. It's that cohesive demo. Right? We're all in an agile release train together because we're developing an integrated solution. Show me that integrated solution, not the individual parts. So we want to tell the story. PowerPoint is the worst, right? You do not get good feedback from PowerPoint presentations, right? Show me a demo. Have a recording in your back pocket in case you get that proverbial, the demo environment goes down. Have recordings available to walk through that. You will get more feedback from an actual recorded demonstration than you will from a PowerPoint slide. Another failure of preparation is fail to train the problem-solving facilitators. Problem solving is hard. It's very hard to go through all those steps in the problem-solving workshop, right? In my experience, you've got to spend at least 2 hours walking whoever's going to facilitate your problem-solving sessions, walking them through the basics of facilitation, all the different pieces of that event. They need to know how to recognize when people are dominating the conversation or when others are not feeling it's safe to share. They've got to recognize that. They need to be able to recognize when the group is going off topic or when they're going down a rabbit hole too far. And the classic is during problem solving, there is a tendency for participants to want to skip the less exciting steps like problem exploration and root cause analysis to get to the more exciting steps like solutioning. So you need strong facilitation skills to keep them going toward the root cause of the problem, to identify why things are really happening, not symptoms, not jumping to solutions that may not actually be solving the real problem, but going through all those steps and sticking to it. This is why it takes 2 hours to actually do a problem-solving workshop, is to explore all those steps so we're not solutioning before we understand the real problem. And time box. Manage this time box. It takes preparation, right? The demo portion of it is going to be 45 to 60 minutes. the metrics, the quantitative and qualitative, is going to be 45 to 60 minutes to talk about the narrative that leads to the retrospective and problem solving, which is about 2 hours. I've seen these a half a day, all the time, right? Half a day is a great investment of time to actually go through these things and identify the demo, which provides feedback into the metrics, and the metrics, which all together provide feedback into the problem solving. And it is going to take a commitment to do that. So that's lack of preparation. Now, a little quote from Bobby Knight there, Indiana basketball coach: the will to succeed is important, but what's more important is the will to prepare. So we have to be prepared for these things. The second area that I would say most challenges happen in is the lack of inspection, right? The metrics don't tell a story. The numbers alone don't mean much. It's the narrative that matters, right? It's all about the narrative here. We want to know, what is the story? Why are metrics where they are? Where is it this? Why is this? For example, let's say the team and leaders are lamenting the fact that they only achieved 67% predictability of this PI. But what's the story of why? How did the teams fall short of expectations? What happened? Was there a shift in the market? Was there something unexpected happened? What is the story, right? I need to know that. Another common example is, why did our flow distribution, right? I just dealt with this earlier this year, is we had a capacity allocation policy that said we're going to spend 20% of our time on production support. It came in at 38% as actual time. Why? What happened? What was it that happened? How can we dig into that? Is this a trend that we need to be observant of, right? Do we need to allocate more time in the next PI for production support, or is this just a blip, right? What is it? We need to understand the story and tell that. Another lack of inspection problem is the wrong metrics are presented, right? This is not the forum for team level metrics, right? We're at an art level, we're scaling up. We are at the agile release train, the team of teams level. So we're focused on the metrics that showcase how we're doing as a team of teams. That's what we're focused on. It avoids us from wanting to compare teams, and it talks about the synergy of how everyone's working together. We can measure collaboration. We can measure, are we reducing dependencies? Are we becoming more cross-skilled? We want to find out what metrics that we need to measure. We want to avoid vanity metrics, and we want to focus on actionable metrics. Vanity metrics are those statistics that look spectacular on the surface, but they don't translate into any meaningful business results. So you've probably heard coaches, others say we need to be focused on outcomes over outputs, and vanity metrics tend to be very output focused, right? The measuring the number of features completed instead of the value of those features delivered is kind of like the analogy of the operation was a success, but the patient died. It doesn't matter if you cranked out 100 features if it isn't what your customers wanted or customers needed, right? That's what we're after, is we want to make sure that we're focused on those outcomes. Are we actually delivering to our objectives, delivering to our key results as captured in objectives and key results? We want to look at those things. Definitely want to look at those things. And other thing is inspection is, remember, facts are friendly. From Kung Fu Panda, it's not good news. It's not bad news. It's just news. It's the narrative behind it. Metrics are not weapons. We don't want to weaponize metrics. Don't ever, I've had to coach many engineering managers that said, last month you deployed 18 times, but this month you've only deployed 12 times. What gives? Why is your productivity going down? Nothing's more frustrating to an engineering team to hear things like that. So we want to coach them into better questions, shift your perspective. As an engineering manager, say, my engineers want to be productive. They have positive intent. They want to be effective. So what do I need to help them with? What is actually stopping them? You end up with markedly different metrics, markedly different results when you think about that. When you think about they're trying to work as hard as they can, what is in their way? How can I do that? You want to slow a team down, take away their tools. You want to help them find ways to automate things. Help them find ways to get rid of the nuisances that are constantly slowing down, things that they have bottlenecks and weights. right? Where they're always dependent upon a particular vendor and it's never successful. What can I do, right? Thinking about what can I do to empower my team and help them. And with lack of inspection, yeah, it's always tough for us to admit we're wrong, right? We're humans. We have this thing called pride. It's hard to admit when we're broken, right? It's hard to admit when a process is broken, right? You know, we've always done it this way. Well, that's not always going to be what works. And so SAFE was designed to challenge these comfort zones, challenge the status quo, and that requires inspection, you know, heartfelt inspection, right? Really looking at things, taking emotional intelligence, you know, and adaptive intelligence and applying these things to find better ways of doing things. So we have to constantly challenge that. The third area here is lack of adaptation. And you can look at several of those things from the survey that result in lack of adaptation. It was like, I think the number 2 or 3 item on that survey is this, I'll start with the last one, inspect and forget. You know, there's kind of an argument about who coined that phrase, but it is inspect and adapt, not inspect and forget. Adaptation requires that there's things in your backlog that are added to your backlog, actual features added to your backlog that are features focused on process improvement, product improvement, practice improvement, maturity. These things have to have experiments in the backlog, and they have to be talked about, because inspect and adapt is the bookend, right? It's the last thing we do. The next thing we do is PI planning for the next planning interval. And so these items need to be part of that presentation when we talk about the focus and goals and, you know, what our solution context and product vision is for the next PI has to include these experiments, these ideas for the next PI. Another one is no problem solving at all, right? That's just, you know, you're never going to embrace relentless improvement if you don't inspect and adapt. Or I've seen it too, where it's late. Right? We'll do inspect and adapt in the first iteration of the next PI. Well, how is that feeding improvement into that PI? Right? They don't do that, right? They don't actually plan it where it's supposed to be planned. You know, it's supposed to be the last thing we do before we go into PI planning for the next PI. When our problem-solving groups are too big, we're not going to get adaptation, because when they're too big, you get silent voices or you get people dominating. These problem-solving sessions should be about the size of an agile team. You know, that the whole idea of, you know, 5 to 9, you know, maybe a little bit more, somewhere in there where they're actively problem solving. And yes, it's okay for multiple problem solving groups to be solving the same problem. You're going to get more options, more ideas, more opportunities to run experiments. It's quite okay for these groups to be tackling the same problem, because they're going to have different perspectives. And it's kind of this divergent and convergent thinking. The same thing that we'd use with design thinking is we want this convergent thinking and getting all these exploration and this creative brainstorming of potential solutions, and then coming together to say, what is the most feasible solution, the most viable solution, and how can we actually implement that? And so, yeah, we have to do root cause analysis. Don't just jump to solutioning right away. That's not going to lead to positive results. And we want to make sure that we're actually doing adaptation with this, right? And make sure that we have creativity, making sure that there's psychological safety to actually express ideas. We don't want to critique others' responses. That's not what it is. Every idea is welcome. There's power in community. We want to make sure that we're getting to that, having that creativity and having that opportunity to truly inspect and adapt and not inspect and forget. So those are my 3 areas, right? Lack of preparation, lack of inspection, right? Not actually looking at things carefully, and the lack of adaptation, right? Where you're not actually making changes to enhance your product, enhance the system that is developing the products, grow in maturity, and make changes, right? Make powerful, audacious changes that can actually help you improve in the long run. And so if I were to summarize that into a single slide, into what are my tips for the best inspect and adapt event, these are the 4 areas that I would say, right? If you had a cheat sheet to take away, how do you make it more exciting? Make your system demo more exciting. I love this from the Forbes Technology Council. The best system demos, and I've witnessed this, are the ones where you have the actual customer or end user browse through the product updates, right? You're helping them navigate, but they have the hands on the keyboard. They have their hands on the mouse. They're experiencing it, right? Real time. I've seen this done in a roadshow kind of effect, right? We actually walk the users through it and let them hands on, just like you test drive a car before you buy it, right? You want to have the hands on and allow them to do that. You know, do you hear oohs and ahs when people present things? Do teams applaud each other and get applause from other stakeholders in attendance? Is there a wow factor in this? You know, if your user or customer were in attendance, would they be thrilled or would they be bored? Right? Is their cognitive load going to be completely messed up because you're bouncing all over the application and they have no idea if they're on the front end of the application, the back end of the application, if they're somewhere deep in the middle, right? Help them by navigating through it. That's going to generate feedback. If your demos don't generate feedback, something is broken. Something lacks excitement if you're not generating feedback. You know, my biggest tip is to follow the user's journey through the application or system or workflow. Follow that journey when you actually conduct these major system demos. Put it in the context of the person that is going to be receiving this information. The second thing here is make sure you're doing data-driven insights. What is the narrative? Are we measuring the right things? You know, are we asking questions about the metrics, identifying positive and negative trends, doing true inspection? Are we doing that? Are we using this data to implement corrective actions, right? Actually using not vanity metrics, but actually actionable metrics that can lead to adaption. You know, how and why real lean agile metrics make all the difference in your success and your ability to change. So data-driven insights. And then mix it up to identify systemic issues. Doing Ishikawa fishbone diagrams and 5 whys is hard, and it can be confusing and challenging, and people can get stuck. But you don't have to just use those techniques. Much like we encourage Scrum teams and Agile teams to mix up how they do retrospectives, you can do the same thing with the inspect and adapt. Draw me a picture of how you think this went, right? Was it a Rube Goldberg machine, like a total mess? Or was it sunshine and daisies and daydreams, right? What was it like? Draw me a picture. Be creative about how we surface problems, right? We want to explore these different ways to identify problems. Step through the problem using different techniques, you know, in order to identify what is the most important problem we need to solve. You know, use different techniques to identify those. You could play Shark Tank to say, you know, what is the problem we should invest in? What should we invest time in? Do those types of things. And of course, actionable outcomes. Don't inspect and forget, right? That is the key to all this is action items need owners, they need a champion, and they need to be in the next PI planning backlog. And they need to be presented on equal playing ground with business features, technology enablers. All of these items that came through these experiments, these actionable takeaways, need to be part of that actual next PI's planning. They need to be made visible. I should see features and user stories in backlogs that talk about these things. What are we going to do as an art, as teams, to get better in these particular areas? This was the takeaway. We need to set aside time for it and make sure that we're doing the things to make things better. And so that's my biggest tips. Kind of went through that in a whirlwind fashion, but I'll have time for questions a little bit later. I did want to bring up and shift gears a bit to some tools for inspect and adapt. Of course, Scaled Agile provides us several different things. There's the Safe PI Execution Toolkit, which has a complete inspect and adapt template. It has all the PowerPoint you could possibly need to how I would orchestrate the system demo, to walking people through problem solving. It's the great tool to actually use when you're prepping your problem solving facilitators. Walk them through the problem solving steps as outlined in this PI Execution Toolkit. If you're familiar with Safe Studio, Safe Collaborate, there's multiple templates here. There's Ishikawa diagrams, there's action diagrams, there's ways to uncover the valuable ideas, many different templates and tools to actually surface things. Again, about, going back to mix it up with identifying systemic issues, use different tools. Don't use a 5 whys, use something different. Use, one of these action templates, use some sort of creative brainstorming template. There's all sorts of templates available in Safe Collaborate to help you surface problems, to help you identify corrective actions. And so those are the key things to use. And, it's been the Doug show, but I did want to give Corby a chance to talk about Aptio's products and in particular target process. And so if you want to talk to these slides at all, Corby?
Sure. So one of the things, so awesome, awesome conversation so far. One of the things that we try and do is follow along with the idea that you need to have metrics that are weaponized. I really like that because unfortunately I've seen far too often how things do get sort of weaponized. People take things like velocity and say, wow, okay, so how come this team had a velocity of 100 and this team over here had a velocity of 20? Does that mean that the one that did 20 only did, a fifth as much? And that's simply not true. The way that story points work is that it doesn't have to be homogenized across teams. So all that said, a lot of the things that we're asked for in an Agile at Scale platform are ways to measure against a broader set of people. So above the team level and more at the art level, the solution trend level, and things like that. So one of the ones that I like a lot, and again, you have to be careful with it to not use it in the wrong way, is this diagram. So what this is basically showing is when a team signs up for either a set of business PI objectives or a set or a velocity, right, at the beginning of their sprint. I want to track how many points or what score they signed up for, and then what they actually delivered at the end of the sprint or the end of the PI, whatever the right metric is. And what I'm trying to determine is how predictable are they at delivering work, right? So in some cases, you'll see, great scores. In other cases, you won't. The takeaway from teams that you're seeing in, maybe failing to deliver 50 or 70% of their predicted score is something happened. It could be something simple like everybody got COVID, or there was some major bug that came up that everybody had to go work on production support for, or something else. But the key thing is the takeaway for management should be, how can I help? What happened and how can I help make it better? And it's a great place to come to the Inspect and Adapt session and say, yeah, the reason we didn't make it is because we had these blockers, and those blockers were never taken away from us. So we didn't get it done. So here's something we need to do better. We need to make sure that blockers get cleared. So it's a great tool for that. If it's used properly, it's not a destructive metric. It's a very positive metric because it can really help identify teams that are having challenges that aren't getting addressed.
And I think this is a control chart, right? If I go back to statistics, this is a control chart, right? We want people to be between 80 and 100% on a recurring basis as often as possible, right? So over 100% is just as out of control as below 80%, right? And people don't often discuss that in their narrative, right? If I have a team that is consistently delivering 120, 130 over, it's usually a behavioral issue, right? What's happening there that, they're not down, it's sandbagging or what is it? What might be happening there that it's consistently happening, right? An occasional time where, we just knocked it out of the park and delivered all of our PI objectives, committed and uncommitted. That's going to happen. But on a regular basis, that's really tough to do.
Right.
So, control chart.
Yeah. Great point. So around that, if if those of you out there are not doing team PI objectives and team PI objectives, highly recommend it. Aptio practices this internally very religiously. So we have sessions with folks like myself that are basically setting our business value scores against the objectives. We're giving our feedback on which objectives they're selecting. And the teams come back all the time and say, we can't commit to that because we don't feel like we can get it done. So it's an extremely healthy interaction between the development teams, the engineering teams, and the stakeholders, because it gives you a chance to really talk about, first of all, outcomes. Doug, would you say outcomes versus outputs, right? Yeah. So outcomes are what it's all about, right? I have a lot of organizations right now talking about outcome-based metrics and how they really want to try and drive their organizations to be more outcome focused, because it's so easy to get in the habit of just producing work and saying, okay, well, I did 6 stories last sprint. Well, those 6 stories didn't deliver anything of value to anybody. So that's an output, not an outcome, right? An outcome is something that a user can say, yeah, this is great. I really need this. So I really think it's a great technique for organizations, especially those kind of, newer to safe and adoption of this stuff, to embrace early and embrace hard, because it really makes a difference. Target process is kind of because we embrace this internally, but we've embraced it as a tool for some time. And you'll see both PI objectives that can be decomposed into team PI objectives. You can then correlate PI objectives to work items like user stories or features. And so you can kind of tie the loop. I actually challenged Dean Laughingwell last year at the summit to say, okay, so help me connect the dots between OKRs and PI objectives. And he said, we're working on it. So, which is a fair statement. But it's a really strong capability in the tool, but it's a really strong idea to practice as you're working through your safe journey.
And in terms of pushing the limits, I know in my current engagement, I won't say where, but we've really worked hand in hand with the target process folks at Aptio to build out flow metrics, right? To really use the tool to build out things like, what is my, flow capacity, and my feature flow histograms, my feature flow time, and really work through those. And there's been a lot of reception to that, and it's growing, and you talk about closing the loop, right? If I can close the loop on these flow metrics, that's awesome. So.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that we get asked a lot, I'm sure you do too, is management wants some measure of productivity, right? As this stuff gets, more and more mature, and more people kind of start to understand the systems involved in the ceremonies, et cetera. They're trying to figure out how to measure success, measure productivity. And there's just nothing better than flow metrics to do that. It really gives a good sense of things. Now, the one thing you have to really watch for, and I mentioned this earlier, is in particular with story points. Story points were not designed to be like a standard definition. So a story point is not a story point, right? So different teams will have different story points. So you have to be careful about how you try and homogenize or standardize your flow metrics. But as a way to expose just the basic information here, it's just nothing better. And this is an excellent example of how to use it.
And I think also target process helps with retrospectives and identifying action items, right? So.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier. It's like, so if unfortunately, some of the early I&As that I did as a coach, we tracked the outcomes, or not the outcomes, the kind of the findings of the inspect and adapt sessions in our tool, Azure DevOps in that case, and that was good. We got them recorded. We got everybody to agree that these were the issues that we wanted to take on. The next time we had the session, we're sitting there looking at the same damn things and going, we didn't do anything. We didn't solve anything. So part of the story here is, first of all, you got to capture them, get them recorded. Second part is get that in front of everybody, slam them in the face with this stuff. This is important stuff. People aren't going to, bring it up if it's not something that's, top of mind. So keep it in a tool, but then also make sure that early into the next PI, you're talking about how you're going to solve those issues for this one, because otherwise, this is how the sort of erosion happens with these sessions, because nothing happens from them. You've got to have real results. People have to feel like if they bring stuff up here, and again, this is why I brought the retrospectives and action items. This is where you're going to capture it, and this is how you're going to keep it top of mind.
Awesome. Well, again, we covered the tools. There's lots of tools out there available. And I'm going to turn it back over to Dee here for a minute to talk about, we can actually help. I mean, if you're having trouble with your inspect and adapt and getting the most out of it, we can help. And so I'll let Dee explain our offering.
Thanks, Doug. I'll just chime in real quick, and then I know we're going to move on to Q&A. So, we debated, this is such a big topic. We get so many questions for advice and help on getting the results from the inspect and adapt investment that you're making. Originally, we talked about, do we offer training? Do we offer a customized workshop? And it was really Doug and other coaches who kind of pushed back and said, you know what? The best way for people to learn is to do it live, to do it hands-on. As a coach, let me get in there. Let me get in there and help guide their demo so they get better results and feedback from that. Let me look at their metrics, those quantitative and qualitative metrics, and help them craft that story. Let me lead the facilitation of this I&A, but beforehand, go ahead and invest and train your problem-solving facilitators that are going to assist with the breakout groups. And let me guide that organization on how to have a follow-through plan that's actually going to happen, and do a readout on what I've learned about their transformation, their organization, beyond I&A while I'm there. So, of course, the question was, well, how long is that going to take? And, I love the answer, which was 1 to 2 weeks, depending on the complexity of the organization. Let me get in there. Let me help hands-on. Let people learn live. That's the best way. So we created an offer around that. We have a couple different pricing options based on how much time that would take. But again, it's all around 1 or 2 weeks kind of investment. And we tried to make the pricing really approachable, honestly, more approachable than training. And I think you'll get more out of it than just training your team to do it live. So if you're interested in this, don't worry. After the webinar that you registered for, of course, you're going to get an email that gives you the recording from this session and a way to contact us, and more on this offer if you're interested. So thanks, Doug. I will hand it back to you because I know there are a lot of Q&A questions building.
I just opened up the Q&A. And so I'll just start to take these in the order that they're there, and feel free to add some, and we'll just basically go until time is up. Either we have no more questions or time is up. So the first one is, it is difficult to make teams sit for 3 to 4 hours for I&A. Can they be split up? Absolutely, right? We need to have empathy for people. Nobody wants to sit in a marathon meeting for 4 hours. We need to have breaks. I usually encourage a break after the system demo and a break after the metrics review. And then after we have the surfacing the problems, maybe take a short break before you go into your problem solving sessions. That's going to extend your time a bit, but again, it's empathy for people and respect for people that we want to have. So absolutely, you can split it up. I've seen them, people do things in the, part of it in the morning, part of the afternoon. The one thing you want to avoid is too much time between the demo and the metrics review, because people can quickly get distracted and go about their daily business and forget what they just saw minutes ago, and what the story behind the metrics were, the narrative behind the metrics, because that should feed problem solving. So splitting up, great, but just make sure you don't split it up so far that you lose the continuity of inspecting and adapting behind that. So hopefully that answered. that question. Another question here is, what is one way a Scrum Master or team coach can support the inspect and adapt? One, that they're going to be helping the RTE gather metrics, right? So they're going to be a pivotal part of that overall collection of quantitative and qualitative metrics. They might even be helping product management with, hey, this is this team's part of the demo. This is where these fit in. If you want to help coordinate a seamless integrated demo that actually follows some sort of customer lifecycle or journey map, right? Help with that, help interject with that. Say, I think we'll best fit here when we do the demo. You can interject that. And I use Scrum Masters all the time as facilitators to problem-solving sessions, right? They are part of that. I mean, facilitation is one of the hats that Scrum Masters, team coaches wear on a regular basis. Leverage that, use that, and have them be a problem-solving facilitator. So those are just 3 ways that the Scrum Master can support the inspect and adapt. And I'm sure there's many others, but it really helping with any demo coordination, helping with metrics collection, and helping with facilitating problem-solving sessions. Yeah, that's the ways that I would suggest to start with. And then there's going to be other ways, right? There's always nuances that you can help with. And if you've got good leadership that are, that understand that many hands make for light work, hopefully they're engaging you in other ways as well. This next one from Jason. In the problem-solving workshop, if you end the retro with 2 or 3 problems to solve and you let people choose which problem they want to contribute to solving, how do you ensure a small group size for the discussion? As I said before, I have no issue with many groups solving the same problem. So I would just cap, I would have I'd do maybe a feeling before breaking out into sessions as to what the passion is for each of those items we're going to problem solve. And if I end up with, you could do a quick dot voting. Hey, I think this is where I want to go. And you've got 50 people that all want to tackle this problem. Break it up into 5 problem solving sessions. You need to make sure that you've got trained facilitators for it, but break it up. Just because large groups, you just don't get as much engagement. People can multitask too easily. They'll be out of sight, out of mind. They'll just be listening, not contributing. We want contributors, and the best is done. I mean, all sorts of, different theories and mathematics and number theory talks about, smaller groups are going to problem solve better. So just understand, where that passion might be, where people's passion might be, and then make sure that you've got enough facilitators to break that up. If you don't have enough facilitators, you want to make sure that whoever's facilitating these sessions, that's probably one of the number 1 things, because if they don't know how to facilitate, it's not going to go well. So maybe you have to break that rule of small because of the number of facilitators you have. And that's okay. Just be creative. How do you engage people? Maybe you encourage some silent writing first, and then, some divergent and then convergent thinking to get everyone contributing into that problem solving session. But, I would probably gauge where the passions are to see how many people, before I go and break into the sessions, how many people are interested in which topics, and then use that to drive how many problem solving sessions I might have to have for that one particular topic. And I think it's fascinating to have multiple groups problem solving the same thing, because you get many more creative answers. And it also helps you control the time box a lot better. So hopefully that answered the question. If not, feel free to post a follow-up and I will answer that.
We used lean copy. We had a bunch of folks that were remote during COVID, and we used sort of a lean copy approach to get the folks oriented around topics, and that worked pretty well, especially when we were having to do remote stuff back then.
Thanks, Corby. Yeah. Some examples of actionable metrics to help invoke improvements. Flow metrics. Flow metrics are designed to be actionable, right? When I look at like flow distribution, where did I spend my time? Is that what we had planned, right? That's actionable because it can compare, here's what my target was, here's what my actual was. I can actually use that. All my flow time, is cycle time going down, right? If I'm looking at flow time, flow metrics are all actionable. They are not vanity metrics at all. They are all actionable metrics. When I look at the histogram of where things are, across all the teams, predictability, those are all actionable metrics. Your DORA metrics for DevOps, if you're familiar with DORA metrics in DevOps, measuring things like your mean time to repair and what is the success of your releases. Some key quality metrics, right, around net promoter score, customer satisfaction. Those should all be actionable metrics. Some things when you get into counts, right, those are vanity metrics. Yay, we completed 1,000 stories. Well, what's the so what, right? What did those 1,000 stories actually provide to my customers? That's what we want to get at. So vanity metrics are things that just look good, but they're not actionable, right? I can't make a decision from it, but I can make decisions from the predictability charts, right? I can drive problem solving, right? Saying why, right? They're better about asking why questions, and there's a narrative behind it. Corby said, why did we have this blip in predictability? Did COVID affect us, right? We saw it, this mandate for people coming back to the office, and what did that do to productivity, right? You can actually see what corporate changes might have driven some actual engineering development, product development changes, right? So you can see those correlations. And that's what you want in terms of actionable metrics, where I can actually see where decisions have actually impacted that productivity, performance, throughput, flow, right? We want to look at those things. Other actionable metrics.
Go ahead, Doug.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say a couple of ones that we've implemented recently. One is it's a good standard practice to keep your most of your teams persistent, when you're applying Agile. And so one of the ones that we built was basically a measure of how persistent teams were. So we were looking at inflow, outflow of team members, team sizes changing, on a sprint by sprint basis, things that would indicate that they're not holding those teams persistent. And again, there may be perfectly valid reason for that, but at least it's a place somebody can take a look at. The second one is what we're calling a volatility metrics. And basically, when we start with a prioritization from our PI plan, then, there's always drift as people, as product owners start to inject in work and new things based on, life happening, right? And so what we're starting to measure now is how much drift has happened since the team launched onto their PI planning. And again, it may be perfectly legitimate. I mean, we're trying to be agile, but at the same time, there may be work that's getting injected in that doesn't fit the sort of objectives for the session. So just a couple other ideas for folks to kind of look at to help kind of keep things on an even keel.
Thanks. This next question: what are problem-solving methods that work? If done well, right, the fishbone and 5 whys work really well, right? But you have to have that strong facilitator that understands how they're supposed to work and understands how to ask the 5 whys, right? And have to really drill into, focus in on why, because, and then take that because and say, well, why is that happening? These really do work when implemented well, and they've been around forever, right? I mean, they've been around since the 50s or before, and they work. They're tried, true, and they work, but there are other methods, right? Just like, it'd be way too much to go in here. We could probably have a complete talk on just retrospective and problem-solving tools that are available and techniques that are available. But there are many different creative brainstorming techniques. You can go to, there's books. There's Agile Retrospectives book that is a great way to identify and surface problems. There's tastycupcakes.org is one of my favorite websites to go to for ideas to surface problems. Right? Just type in, identifying problems, Google it, go to ChatGPT and say, what are some effective problem solving methods? And you'll get a bunch, right? So, and what is effective for one person isn't going to be effective for everyone. So you have to find what works for you, but then also mix it up. Don't get stuck in a rut of doing the same thing over and over again, because then, if you do the same thing over and over again, you might expect the same results. But maybe you want to mix it up to see if you can't uncover some new ways and something new, something fresh that nobody had thought of before. I only got about a minute left, but I want to try to quickly get this one. How would you deal with an art that doesn't want to do system demos because they say they have done them before and don't see the value in doing the system demo that they're doing after each event? I mean, this is a different demo, right? This is a much higher level and everyone is attendance. I very much doubt that every member of the art has seen every other team's demo. This is an opportunity for them to see their solution in their contribution to the overall solution in the context of the integrated solution. Right? We have to sell it and pitch it that way, that we have different stakeholders, shareholders, investors, customers there. Right? This is the showcase of all showcases for the PI. And I think that's a PI. And you have to sell it that way. It is different audience, different context, and really a different outcome. So
I think we're at time. Thanks so much, Doug and Corby. Always appreciate your insights.
and we will send out the recording, right? And I will provide a PDF of the content.
Yes. Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Excellent job, Doug. Yep.
Thanks, Corby. Thanks, Dee. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Dee.